Good evening, everyone. I have had a couple of requests recently for two images to show some of the editing process. So the first image that was requested was this blue jay tail. And these edits can take kind of long, so I'm going to try to just walk through the highlights of how this one came to fruition. So this is the image that was posted to my Instagram account. And then we're going to, sorry about that, get rid of these guys. And I'm going to reset. And so here's the original image as shot. And really, we're just trying to focus. I wanted to just kind of really hone in on these patterns here. And so we just can start with a crop. You know where we're going to go with this. And then this was at 1600 ISO. And so I went in and just did a quick denoise, especially if we know we're going to do this for an artful purpose. Like I had this piece printed for a local show here. So we'll just get that done, maybe do some quick sharpening. And again, these things can all be undone, right? But these are just some of the preliminary steps. And here I think the big deal is adding in some more manual noise reduction. And again, know the end game for the image. This one I knew was going to print in an 11 by 14 size. And so, I had an idea of the artful component to this image. And I even had an idea of what kind of paper I wanted to print the image to. So now we're going to go ahead and just see if we can choose the background, and we're going to just bring down that exposure. And when I do this, I take care of all these sliders up here, and then I'm going to see if we can keep adding to that. Now, if you want to work quickly, we're going to always reduce the feather and bring up the flow and density. And it should help us to eliminate elements that we don't want rather quickly. So see how quickly that is working. We'll show you in a little bit with the feather, but how we'll do just the opposite. And then really just kind of work these edges here. And we're going to remove the parts that we don't want. And now this isn't going to look exactly like what I posted, but these are all the steps, okay? So we're just going to go here. And then I came across the top. And I had a couple of different iterations, but I kind of liked leaving some of the softer feathers sitting on top. And then I literally just took this, brought it around, and then just create the shape that you want. I think I rounded this out just a bit more. So that's all there is to just kind of creating your initial, the shape. And now the other thing I did with this image, let me just come around the bottom here. Now I think I came up here as well and sort of let those white feathers be the end of this one. I'm gonna just using my mouse and using the roller on the mouse. Okay. So that sort of gets our baseline. And then I went in now with this one, I actually rotated as well. So I really wanted this shape, which means we're going to have to go back here and grab this brush, and then we're going to go ahead and remove these other parts. All right, so now we've kind of got our blank canvas. See how easy that was? And maybe we'll just rotate it a little more and bring it over. You can always mess with this part later. All right, so now from here, I'm really just going to start playing with the sliders. The whites are a little bright for me, so I might see what happens if we kill some of the highlights and whites. I don't want to lose that brightness, but we don't want to go crazy. And then sometimes really honing in on your blacks just makes everything a little sharper. Gonna play with texture. Now, one thing that will start to pop here when you start playing with clarity, you will often add some dimensions. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring that clarity up a little bit and then play with the dehaze too and kind of see how we like that. All right. And then you can mess with your exposure. So what I want in my mind, what I saw here is I really wanted to use these shadowy portions to make this top portion pop, and add some dimension to this image. So right now, that's the part that I'm going to work on. And then we'll talk about kind of how to smooth away these edges. So in a lot of my images, I have a dichotomy of texture and clarity. So I'm going to hit the K key, and that's going to give me a brush, and I'm going to bring up the feather and I'm going to move down the flow and density. So I want this brush to work a little more softly than what you saw earlier. And then I'm going to go down here and move texture down, and I'm going to go ahead and just take a little bit of texture out of these dark sections, and I'm going to soften them up. But then I'm going to come up here and see what I can do to bring up some lightness in them. I'll usually try playing with other sliders before I go to exposure, but sometimes exposure is what we've got that will work best. And in this case, this is a left-leaning histogram, so getting back some of the detail, it looks like exposure is working well here, and then we can kind of come back down here. So see how we kind of added some dimension already just by changing the lighting here and bringing that up a little bit. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to hit return and grab a new brush with K, and then I'm going to do just the opposite and bring up texture and clarity, and I'm going to paint in here. Now here is the overlay. I don't always use the red, but you can see, so this would kind of tell you where exactly your mask is going, like I drew outside the lines there. But a lot of times I don't do that because I really just want to see the effect of what I'm doing. And then I may grab a dehaze here. All right, and then I think also I'm gonna, and again, I'll just keep layering brush after brush after brush. And so I think these feathers, I want to soften them up as well. So I'll go back down to texture, and I'm just going to soften this top layer, and I'll just kind of run all across here because we're gonna want this to blend. So we'll soften that up, and then again, I'll kind of run back up to the whites and see if we can maybe make those layers pop a little bit. See the difference there? So maybe have some of those feathers pop. And I like that there's the light source was already sort of a nice flow from darker to lighter. I don't think I'm going to mess with that at all. And then we're gonna grab another brush, and now I'm gonna get to the outsides here, and we're gonna go ahead and we've got our feather in a good place. I'm gonna bring down all of these sliders because we're gonna work in the black realm again, and then I'm gonna stay out here outside the image and just kind of test how far in. So you can see we're just going to start taking those harsh edges off of the blue and down into the white. Can you see the difference there? We're just trying to make this hard line go away. I already like the way this looks. And then I'll just kind of come across the top here as well. And we can just keep working that until you're happy, and you can keep changing your feather, keep bringing up the feather, reducing the flow and density, and this tool is going to be less and less impactful and allow you to work closer and closer. You see, now you can hardly see any change. So that's how you do that. So you just want to keep going around the edges and just add that little bit of fade and get those harsh lines out of there. It's much more dramatic. All right. And then this is popping a little weirdly for me. We've zoomed in. This was a big crop and had some ISO. So this is not perfect down here on the bottom like I would really like it. But I think I'm going to come in here and just see what happens. Maybe if we add a little shadow on these whites. And try all different kinds of things, bringing them down if you want to, little exposure maybe. We're still got the nice white, but maybe not make them pop so much. I like these whites popping better. This was the bigger light source. Now another thing we can try to soften those whites is with it. I'm just keep adding layers with my brush, and I'm just going to add some temperature. Now, a lot of times I'll just kind of guess and run into my slider, and then I'll just sort of paint over the image, and then I can play with how much. So I'm just going to kind of try to add some warm tone here. So see that difference? So now we've just added a bit of warmth, and then I can also, if we wanted to, we could bring down this feather, add more warmth, and it would be a more impactful effect. Now, if we wanted to, we can just kind of make this pop. And then even down here, you can see this is bringing in, using the green tint, adds a different color tone to those blues, and then this even adds a little more into the violet spectrum. So for a blue jay, if you wanted to stay realistic, I would probably lean just a little bit to the right there. Now these are actually look like pieces of pine straw that were on this bird, and I left it just as shot. I think that's kind of neat, natural, and that's exactly what they look like. Now, I would like this to be a little more clear. So what I'm going to try to do here, I'm going to check down below and see where we dehazed. We've got our sharpening up. That's good. So I'm going to kind of go over that middle section again with a new brush. And I'm going to really move up texture and clarity and see if there's a little more impact here while we leave the rest of the image a little softer. And again, you could keep going around these edges and really soften them up if you wanted. But that's essentially how you get to a place like this. And then from here, you can just let your imagination and your artistry run wild in terms of shadowing and what you want darker or lighter. I'm seeing here, if you really wanted this section here to pop a little more, you could bring in a brush, like let's say we just bring down shadows. And if you wanted, the darker you make these areas, the more this part is going to pop. And that's going to start to give the image more dimension. The lighter these get, the less this is going to stand out. So use the shadows and light from your image as shot, and then you can really exacerbate them. And even then get down to the nitty gritty. Here you can see this is darker, this is lighter. So you can even bring up a little bit of exposure and just piecemeal it in. And then see how we're even adding some more light there. And then you can leave this part here a little less. You could bring in a little more light here. And your image will change every time you sort of create that light source or not. So I hope that's helpful. As always, reach out and I'd be happy to answer questions or assist if you need it.